So in that case, what's up, people? I know it says the Movie Files channel down in the wherever you look for your YouTube channel name, but you're probably wondering who these two people are. I'm like, you got your regular host right there. That's Elliot. He's the guy. But for right now, we are currently coming in and we are hijacking his channel. Who are we to many of Elliot's faithful followers? Well, I'm about to tell you. My name's Dom. My nickname's the Movie Nerd. That's my partner, Chris. He's the TV nerd, and we are the co-founders of the Talkin' TV podcast, and we are here. I love making jokes like saying that we're about to hijack Elliot's network, but honestly, if we're being completely cordial here, Elliot actually reached out to us and said that we should do a collaboration, and I was like, yes, absolutely, we should do this. And so without further ado, I mean, again, it's his channel, so you guys already know that this is him. Of course, introduce the one, the only, Elliot Collins. I just wanted to make sure I got that right. From St. Louis, Missouri. Elliot, what's going on, dude?
Going good, man. Living this self-quarantine life in the last few weeks. Social distancing and all that stuff, and watching a lot of movies, a lot of shows, and crazy times, guys.
Yep, whatever we can do in order to keep everything sane. I just wanted to point out, I also love your background. I think it's very reminiscent of the Nostalgia Critic. I feel like if there was ever going to be like anybody with a spiritual successor, I'm like, hey, you already got the set design going. And of course, my faithful partner, Chris Ivanko. Chris, we're back for yet another live stream. It's not on our channel this time, but if anything, that may actually end up being doing us a favor in the long run, especially considering how the last one went. But yeah, how are you doing today during all this past week of self-isolation hell that we're in?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm always happy to be here, but I would say right now, I'm very happy to be here because, like I told you guys before we went live, like I was really looking forward to this. It's not only is it something to do, it's like something I've kind of wanted to do for a while, which is collaborate with other people here on the YouTube space. For those of you guys just joining us, like, yes, this is Elliot's channel, and he was kind enough to let us host our podcast on his network. He's our guest right now, obviously. This is what we do. Me and Dom, we interview people, or have them on the show just to chat. Usually, sometimes it's just us, and we just talk about, like, a topic of the week. And so this week, we figured, hey, we're all isolated, we're all self-quarantined in our room, so why not just go live and talk about none other than Contagion? And we're thankful.
I was about to say, and if by usually you mean most of the time, it's just the two of us. But again, we've been having some fun getting some guests on, and yeah, again, with Chris continuing in his spoiling nature, yes, we are here to talk about the movie that I think it's safe to say is a pretty definitive stance on what we were living. As I said in my letterbox spiel, Steven Soderbergh deserves the Matt Groening Award for predicting the future, because everybody knows The Simpsons just straight up predicts the future. Like, everybody knows that at this point. So the fact that Steven Soderbergh was able to make this movie a full 9 years before we would actually be living it, I feel like the man deserves credit alone, not just for being a good filmmaker, but for being what's that word I'm looking for? Shit, I forgot the word. I always forget words. That's going to be a running trend on here.
I will say this much. As I was watching it, I was kind of like, whoa, that was like 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And then that was 2 weeks ago. I mean, for all that I have to say about this movie that isn't good, just to lean more into the spoiler thing, which there is a lot, the awareness and the sort of the way he was able to predict, and obviously you can tell that the source material was very much so studied, because he was just spot on, dude. I mean, you take out whatever their disease was and you put in COVID-19 and you pretty much have like what we're living right now. So, I mean, Dom, I think to
put this data in perspective, I was literally sitting there through each minute of the movie and being like, okay, so this was a few weeks ago. This was like last week. Yeah. This is this week. What's coming next? I'm like, tell me, Sage Soderbergh, what will be our salvation from this hell that we are in right now?
It was really freaking me out, but then I got to, I was like, okay, but it is just entertainment.
Hey guys, hey Donna, how are you doing?
Donna?
What's up, Donna?
Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
We appreciate you being here. And so with that being said, we also appreciate Elliot hosting us. And so, Dom, I think it'd be remiss of us to not let Elliot sort of jump in and take like the first reins on this and give us his thoughts, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Elliot, before we actually jump in and start to talk about this movie, give us kind of like some of your history kind of with this movie, like the first time you watched it, what you thought of it, like when it first came out versus now. Like, just kind of give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. As we were kind of chatting before the live here, saw it when it hit the theaters in 2011. Back when I had like a really, really like janky YouTube channel back in the day where I just used to review a bunch of random stuff. And this was my first time rewatching it since 2011. So when you sent me the link to look at it last Sunday, I forgot a lot of it, to be honest with you guys. It was like, oh, I don't remember this person dying and don't remember this storyline happening. The only thing I remember was literally the ending, because it was just like a small little bat. Pig eats the fruit, and it all breaks down from there. So no, it's again, rewatching it last Sunday was just like, wow, this is almost like I was saying at the beginning of before we got on the chat. They should re-release it in theaters and say, this movie is based on true events.
Seriously, and nobody would know the difference.
It is very crazy. Yeah.
Dude, I mean, I watched it for the first time 2 nights ago, and I almost wanted to turn it off because, as I just said, it was so terrifying. But thankfully, all the bad performances sort of took me out of it, and we're able to to pull me through it. But I mean, I have to say, it is that pertinent, and it is that time sensitive where, like, if you can't suspend disbelief here, you're gonna be very scared watching this at this point in time.
Yeah, most definitely. And if we're just jumping into my personal history, so my whole thing is I actually watched this a couple years after it came out. This movie came out in 2011. I watched it in, I believe it was spring 2014. I was a junior in high school in my AP bio class. Problem is with that class at the end of the day, so I would be lucky if I would make it through a full class, with science. It would always give you like an extra period every other day for labs and stuff. And I'd be lucky if I could ever get through like a full, like, an hour, sometimes 2 hours in that class, like with actually awake. So you put on a movie, dunzos. No way I'm making it through. So, and this wasn't, keep in mind, this wasn't like a Lion King or like a Jurassic Park or anything like that. This is Contagion. And for a junior in high school who has no self-awareness of the world, it's not exactly the most entertaining, engaging thing. So needless to say, I fell asleep during the whole thing. And so obviously now, given our current status and our current climate that we're in, I was kind of like, and obviously for the purposes of this podcast, but also it was one movie on a long list of movies that I have that I've been meaning to rewatch for a while now. And I gotta say, after rewatching it, I was like, oh man, I don't think there was a single second where I could take my eyes off. I think the only break that I took was I'm like, okay, I just need like some relief. Like right now, I need to breathe. I need to take a minute. I need to go into the other room and then come back and finish this thing. Because let me tell you something. For an hour and 46-minute runtime, there is not a single minute to me where I am uninterested or I can take my eyes away. And I'm not quite sure if it's because of the actual quality of the film itself or just because of the times we're living in. But that's what we're going to figure out today.
Yeah, I think so.
This is the question that is posed. Is this movie simply great because it predicted the circumstances that we are in right now? Or is it truly a great film in it of itself? So,
well, Don, before we do that, I think it'd be nice for you to let Elliot know sort of like your history with like falling asleep during movies and sort of like in that. I mean, I think,
of course we're gonna fucking go there.
Let's just get a little background history before we, because it's gonna get real heavy. It happened.
Okay, first off, for anybody who doesn't know, Elliot, I'm sorry that I had to break this to you, and I hope you don't get shut down on YouTube for this. But yes, I smoke a lot of pot, and guess what? When you smoke pot before movies, you tend to fall asleep during them. That's happened almost every single time. I learned my lesson in 2019 after Richard Jewell. I was like, okay, I'm not doing this again, because at that point it was just starting to take a little bit of a dip into my wallet. I'm like, I gotta go see all these movies again. It happened with me like 3 times in The Fall Alone. I'm like, okay, it's not gonna happen again. I promise.
Well, yeah, but hey, you know what I respect though, Dom? You go back and you finish the films.
Yeah. Because I'm not going to give a review on an incomplete movie. I did that like once with Bohemian Rhapsody, and I just felt dirty about it. It's like, okay, I get this movie sucks, but at the very least, I'll still be shitty if I don't actually watch the movie in its entirety.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. Like, how do you guys want to sort of start to unpack this? I mean, it is a lot considering...
I mean, do you want to just like dive right into like how this movie starts?
Sure, yeah. Let's do a synopsis and we'll just go from there.
That's like pretty much it. And what I like about it too is that it doesn't go. It goes for like kind of a little bit of. That's the thing I should point out first before we actually break into this movie, is that I think this movie does a really good job of mixing, again, like kind of like almost like a documentary like style of storytelling with like more traditional Hollywood filmmaking techniques. And Soderbergh has always been a guy that's been able to do that really, really well. You look back at some of his earlier efforts, like Traffic in 2000. What's it called? Even something like The Limey, the Che movie that he did in the late 2000s. Like, Soderbergh has always been a guy, and this is why I've always respected him as a filmmaker, is that even though his films may not like be on like any top like 10s that usually come out of the year. Actually, they probably are, but it's that he's probably definitely got like one of the most unique filmmakers in Hollywood. Like you look at any one of his movies, like put this in perspective. The same guy who directed the Ocean's trilogy also directed the Solaris remake with George Clooney, Side Effects with Channing Tatum, and The Limey with Terrence Stamp. Like you put any of those three movies next together. Yeah, that's a diverse palette to say the least. So it kind of makes sense that he would tackle something like this with another collaborator of his, Scott Z. Burns. And the thing that I enjoyed so much about this, especially this time around, is, again, just managing to have that feeling of realness while still having that kind of underlying sense of facade, obviously, that, make movies. And it's a really interesting mix because most of the time, movies can't really do that. You watch it, it's like, okay, this is like trying to be like entirely documentary-esque. You just know it because it's in Hollywood actors or something like The Hurt Locker, with the constant moving camera. Or you get something that is like totally Hollywoodized and like, okay, and you watch that and you're like, okay, I can sense that there is like not even a bit of actual authenticity to this. This is just like Hollywood facade and bullshit, And with that being said, like kind of what's your guys' kind of whole take on that? First off, like what's your relationship with Steven Soderbergh as a filmmaker? Like first off.
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, as you just mentioned, a very interesting, diverse filmography that he has. And, I'm a big fan of his work. And I like in the last 5 or 7 years, he's trying to reinvent himself. He retired sometimes, came back, made a movie with his iPhone, a couple movies with his iPhone. So he's definitely a different director and has a different eye for the camera. So I really appreciate that, but big fan of his. But in regards to the authenticity of this film, I was doing some research into, after I watched it, just kind of seeing what was it that made this film kind of feel so raw and honest and kind of true. He did his research. He had, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they had like 3 or 4 different professional people within their fields of working for the CDC, a professional a journalist who has covered all the main kind of pandemics that we've experienced as a world and things of that nature. So they brought in people that really made this film kind of be like, hey, I think of Christopher Nolan with Interstellar. He brought in astronauts and people in the field and tried to make the film as true and authentic to as real as it can be, as you had mentioned, with the Hollywood type of flair to it. But I think that that just goes to show as far as the truth and the detail, attention to detail, that he brought in these experts to kind of make it feel as real as possible. And as we can see 9 years later, a lot of this stuff is, what it was displayed in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I definitely that makes sense, and I can feel, there's like some things where like people say they did their research, but like I don't know, did they really? Was it just for the marketing to make it more believable? But I can genuinely feel in this film, and I didn't know that, so I'm really glad you kind of went there and looked that up. I could feel that the research was there. I mean, just watch the news, right? we're living it. But I mean, so my familiarity with Soderbergh, I've seen the Ocean's movies a long time ago, but I remember looking upon them fondly when I was younger. They were just so incredibly fun, and just especially like at the age I was watching them, I think like 13, 14, I remember I was just all about those films. I also am a sucker for a good Vince Vaughn performance. So, but with that being said, oh wait, I'm getting my movies confused.
Yeah, you are. I'm like, Vince Vaughn was nowhere near those movies.
Right.
Nowhere near. I'm like, I know how much I hate doing this, but I gotta do it. No,
dude.
Time.
Listen, I've had like 4 concussions from playing football. This is dumb. You keep it in check, dude. But with that being said, yeah. So like, I'm very like hazy, I think is a good word, with my Soderbergh. This is really the first film I've seen of his in my analytical mind, and I wasn't that impressed from like a filmmaking perspective, but like from the material and the way the information was presented, it was very direct and it was clean, and so I understood it. But I wasn't that impressed either with the film. So I mean, maybe now we just sort of dive into like the specific points of the film and like what we thought was good and bad, and just chip away at this thing, right?
Yeah, so if I want to actually tackle that for a second there, which I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because again, it's not a thing of where like you could really look at like any Soderbergh movie that he's made and kind of say like, okay, you could attribute like this direct, distinct style to it. That's kind of one of the reasons why I enjoy him as a filmmaker. He's not a guy where it's like, okay, let's just like run down our list of directors' tropes that we know. Nolan, he's always gonna have some big grandiose like sci-fi technique or principle that he's gonna have in all of his movies. Kubrick, you always know that you're watching a Kubrick movie because he's got like that OCD level of obsession with with like the lenses and the camera tracking, you know, where you can tell that like every single shot was so meticulously planned out beforehand that somebody who had to have like OCD to the level that Kubrick did, you know, made it, you know, like, shit. The point being is that every director,
Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, I mean, they all, people have their stamps. And
everybody's got their own individual stamp and kind of trademark that kind of defines them and defines their filmography. But Soderbergh doesn't really have that, and if anything, that kind of makes me admire him more as a filmmaker, not necessarily less, because if somebody can recognize that something as a Soderbergh film without actually being able to say what makes it a Soderbergh film, a lot of people would probably look at that as a negative, but I personally actually think that's pretty cool, because to me, I'm like, okay, so he makes all of these different types of movies, all in kind of different ways, too. As Elliot, as you mentioned, he shot like the last 4 or 5 movies that he did on iPhone, and to the point where he's literally just like, it is like the filmmaking process for him is just so easy, and he's friends with enough of like these big huge actors that he doesn't even need to go through the Hollywood system. Like his whole retirement that he did, like between Behind the Candelabra and Logan Lucky, which was his first movie back from his 5-year retirement, if you want to call it that. He literally markets his movies completely on his own now. Like he literally just goes to Netflix and is like, okay, I got this movie. I shot it in like a couple months, like on a whim with my iPhone. Here it is. Boom. And Netflix is like, cool, thanks.
So are you saying like he's respected? He has a clout that he can sort of like go
100%. Are you
go through back doors or?
Yeah, I mean, look at the talent that he's worked with. You know, like he's worked with George Clooney like a bunch of different times.
Clooney is what I meant, not Vince Vaughn. You guys will learn as we do more retro reviews. I'm always confusing those two since I was little. So yeah, but okay, so like, why do you think it is? Because I honestly was not very impressed. But like, maybe you guys can explain to me how he has this like walk through the back door of Netflix and get a film picked up like that day type clout. Like I don't get that seeing this movie, to be honest.
Well, Netflix, I could say personally, that was just recent, because his first Netflix movie that he did wasn't until last year. He actually had 2 back-to-back Netflix releases last year with both High Flying Bird and The Laundromat. But if we're talking just specifically with this movie, like me personally, like I understand where you're coming from, like from a craft standpoint, because there were a lot of points in Contagion where I was recognizing, I'm like, oh wow, I saw that exact same camera pan in High Flying Bird, you know, like a lot of those like kind of panning and following the characters as they're walking down like a one space. I'm like that type of shot was used like at least like 40 different times in this one movie alone. So in that sense, I understand it's not exactly a movie where it's gonna have like all this crazy craft involved. But if anything, that's kind of what I admire about it, because it's that type of minimalistic filmmaking that kind of takes a step back and allows the story to ring through what it is. You know, that's kind of what I mean when I say like that documentary style of filmmaking.
Okay.
You know,
is he a writer director or do we know this?
No, he is primarily director. Okay. He always goes off.
So a little bit more of like that old school class of like mentality. All right.
Definitely.
So I mean, Elliot, what do you think about his direction? I mean, you said you were a fan, but is there anything in particular that really like makes you like his films, or?
Well, I think, and I'm just kind of, as you guys were, as Dom was talking, I'm just looking at his filmography, just kind of refreshing myself and just seeing the diverse choices and different stories he kind of dives into. As you had mentioned, I actually watched both films on Netflix last year, The Laundromat and High Flying Bird. I preferred High Flying Bird over Laundromat. I felt like Laundromat was just throwing way too much at you. You couldn't really connect to any of the characters. Very ambitious type of. So that film and this film reminded me a lot of each other. We were talking about the kind of the differences in this film, but I think like The Laundromat and this film Contagion, they're really, in my opinion, kind of good stories to tell, but sometimes they feel like a PSA where he's trying to, put this in your face and saying, hey, if you guys do this, this is going to happen. And kind of that's where I felt about, Contagion in regards to, and we'll get to the negatives here in a bit, but I couldn't grab on to certain characters. Like we would spend time with Matt Damon's character and his daughter, and that was probably the heart of the story, right? And then you meet these other characters and Gwyneth Paltrow and the scientists and all that, but it just felt like we were just going here. And there's, again, just felt like a PSA. Like it's just like a kind of a warning of, if you don't take these precautions, this is what can happen, and you don't really get to spend time with some of these characters. And I think that, like I said, as far as just looking at his films, again, you look at Magic Mike, Logan Lucky. I mean, these are all different films, but I think Laundromat and Contagion have a little bit of similarity in regards to is a message that he's just trying to put out there without really necessarily connecting to the characters.
Elliot, I'm actually so happy that you brought up Contagion and the Laundromat, because just a fun fact before Chris jumps in, they're written by the same guy. They're both written by Scott Z. Burns, who also made his directorial debut last year with that Adam Driver movie, The Report, which is like the 5th movie that Adam Driver was in last year, which is ridiculous in and of itself. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Adam Driver was in 5 movies last year. It's insane. But yeah, Chris, what were you going to say?
Well, first and foremost, it seems like I have some homework to do, and watching a movie on Netflix is very easy, especially considering the times we're in. So, but with that being said, I mean, Elliot, I think you hit the mark on the head for me in this situation, is that, like, we just didn't spend enough time with these characters for me to care about them. And so I think earlier when I said, like, it was the performances, I think, to be honest with you, I felt that Bryan Cranston, his character, and pretty much everyone at that CDC office, I felt that they really didn't feel comfortable in their shoes. It felt a little rushed. It felt a little forced. But had we had a little bit more time with them, and we had gotten away from sort of, like you said, the PSA info dump that was this movie, and got a little bit more character growth, I think it would have resonated with me a lot more. Like, I know that moment where she's having her prom night in the living room towards the end of the film, it was supposed to be like that heart-wrenching, heartbreaking moment, but I honestly kind of thought, okay, cool, it's almost over. It didn't, you know what I mean? It didn't pull me in like I think they wanted to. And so, like, most times I'm like, damn, if you usually go over a minute and an hour and 40, it's a little too long. But this is one of the rare cases where I think they could have used a lot more time. But like, I don't even know if giving them like an extra 40 minutes would have helped, just because of how much of an info. Like, this movie to me felt like it was, like Dom brought up the whole documentary thing earlier on. Like, I felt like there was sort of like the facts were there, the knowledge was there, the way they were going to lay it out was solid, but the creative direction they took to lay it out, I felt they clashed. Like, I felt you either needed more information and more, like, you know, cut to news anchors talking about like the drastic increase of the situation globally, or you needed less of that and more of like Matt Damon's house and like them having family moments. It just sort of felt like it didn't have a focus in that regard, although obviously the facts were there. You know what I'm trying to say?
So it was a matter of like kind of like a storyline kind of divide, where you don't feel like they paced out and tracked each individual storyline with each of the characters in a way that helped like kind of flesh the story and made it flow more naturally. Or is it just or did it just come down to a fact of like, because you felt like you didn't care about any of the characters, that kind of took away from the story? Like, I'm just trying to like kind of figure out which one of those it is.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because it kind of helped me to figure out a way to like really pinpoint it. See, this is a confusing one, because it wasn't unenjoyable. And again, like you said at the very start of this thing, Dom, I don't know if that was just because of like the times we're in, and so obviously everyone's super locked into this, but I just like, it felt clear, it felt clean. I wasn't confused, but it just left me wanting so much more. Like, it didn't feel like a complete idea, yet there was so much information that was told in such a perfect way. So it's this really weird feeling, you know? It's like this dichotomy that I've never had before in a film, where I can't understand it, you know? Like, what, do you guys feel the same way? Am I just crazy, or?
Well, I was going to say, so I can see because I actually, as a whole, as a package, I like this film. And I think you had mentioned earlier, you couldn't really, the performances really didn't stand out to you, or the performances didn't really land for you in a certain extent. But for me, that actually, if we didn't have the particular actors in the role of Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, even though she was on the screen for, 4 or 5 scenes, and I think if we didn't have those actors, I can totally see where you're coming from. But in the enhancement of these performances, to me, kind of helped it out. But I can tell the perspective for me. So looking at this film, you get the perspective of the audience, right? We're Matt Damon and we're his family. We're on the ground. We're witnessing all this. He's experiencing all this in real time. And then you go over to the CDC aspect of it, the scientists and what they go through to kind of figure this thing out. They're not playing offense, they're playing defense for most of the film. And then we also get the perspective of the social media aspect in regards to, there's that one scene when Lawrence Fishburne is talking and going back and forth with Jude Law, and he mentions to him that, his Jude Law's character is more fearful than actual disease. That's something that we can talk on in regards to social media and the news, how they create fear more. The fear is more terrifying than actual disease is. So that's where I kind of see, I totally understand where you come from, Chris, but I actually kind of like how they, again, the performances and the actors that we have and the perspective of these 4 different type of characters that were following in the story just kind of really made it engaging for me. And again, I totally agree with you though, in regards to a little more time with the characters and maybe focusing just on Matt Damon and having some of these other characters as background characters. Maybe we would have made it a more straight, narrow, linear type of story. But again, I would love to hear what you think about that, Dom, in regards to those perspectives that we got.
Yeah, well, if you want to talk about the actors for a second, it's kind of one of those situations. What's up, Adam? Thanks for leaving a comment. It's one of those situations where, and again, this is kind of one of the things that I love about Soderbergh, which is where up at school, I was taught by kind of a generation of people who constantly encouraged what they refer to as rebel filmmaking, which is kind of going outside the system at all costs. One of the reasons why Spike Lee was kind of held on this pedestal, and why like a lot of my professors went nuts when Black Klansman came out. They thought it was like, oh my God, it's one of the best movies of the year. Like, I like Black Klansman a lot. I didn't think it was like the best movie of that year, but so I understand. So I kind of like have this respect for those types of directors that can kind of go outside the lines, kind of pull off something like this with a relatively low budget, where you can tell like a lot of the big name actors, like it really is just those 6 big name actors, right? And like the rest of it is like primarily like lesser known character actors in order to help fill in the spaces, But you can tell that they're there not for a giant paycheck, because you can tell that movie's relatively low budget, but because they're friends with Soderbergh and they respect him as a filmmaker, So in that sense, that's kind of where I got it from. And I guess my whole thought process on the storylines is because I'm so engaged by the sense of fear and paranoia that this film is exuding at all points, like from the social media aspect, from just the CDC aspect, like to me, like Lawrence, the thing that makes Lawrence Fishburne's character compelling is not necessarily that I know like everything about him and his backstory, but I know that, okay, he is scared of this thing. And this is like one of the top, at least from what the movie's telling me, at least for the character that he's playing, this is one of the top experts. And if this thing has him scared and he doesn't know what this is, then we should all panic. And that, I feel like, is what makes this film great. And because this film never loses that feeling. And kind of each of the different characters kind of act as different mirrors and voice of like all the different kind of mindsets during that. Like Matt Damon is just the, like kind of the everyday man. It's kind of a joke that's been prescribed on him, as Matt Damon is like a so everyday man, is like, well, there's nothing really special about him as an actor. Like I've heard numerous jokes about them. Team America World Police made an entire sub joke about that. And so he's kind of like where the relatability aspect comes from. Jude Law is like the social media aspect. Where it's like, even though he's an absolutely heinous, despicable character, you hear what he's saying and you're like, okay, I can't necessarily disagree with what he's saying. And Marion Cotillard, with her role and like kind of her. I got like that. If I do have one major gripe with this movie, it's the fact that I feel like the women characters are definitely much more so used as props than actual characters. But I think they still do accomplish like what it is that they're meant to accomplish for their specific storylines.
Well, I mean, we can break down these, I guess, kind of the main characters. So you just mentioned, I was going to say the Marianne, her storyline kind of was like the least interesting part to me in this whole story, just because she gets kidnapped and then she almost has like Stockholm syndrome where she feels bad for these kids and wants to save this neighborhood, but at the same time you were kidnapped and all that, and then it kind of just got lost in translation.
Little glimpses of morality here,
right? But I mean, she's a pivotal point to the story because she's the one that pinpointed that Gwyneth Paltrow, this is ground zero. She started with her, so obviously she's pivotal to the line. But again, I thought she just kind of got lost in the mix of the film. But the other female characters, Kate Winslet, who we all know is a great actress. Yeah. And I think, going back to Matt Damon and his storyline being kind of the heart of it, she kind of bleeds into that in regards to, you feel bad for her. She wants to contain this. She wants to figure everything out. She was given these orders by Lawrence Fishburne to go back to Minnesota to figure out everything. And obviously that was probably the biggest surprise to me in regards to her death, right? You thought she was going to maybe beat this or maybe figure it out, but she was pivotal to the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that her dynamic and Lawrence Fishburne's dynamic was the only real relationship that I think worked in this film on the level that they wanted it to work. When you saw her eventually sort of pass away in the middle of the movie, and she even tries to give the guy next to her the coat because he was cold, and so I think that made sense because we had gotten to know her character enough to see that. But like with the one actress who I forget her name, but she was abducted by the Chinese people, and then they brought
Marion Cotillard from The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, and they brought her to the village, and so like that turn of heart was cool and it was interesting. And I think had we seen her interact with the children there and grow a bond, and see, these are the things about this film that, like, by no means was it a bad film. It just, like, they had a lot of cool things at the end, cool like emotional turns, and like the reactions to the virus at the tail end were interesting by the actors, but we had no build up to it. So when these moments happened, it just didn't feel interesting to me. You know?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. That especially, again, going back to what you were just saying in regards to, if going back to maybe if we focus maybe the majority of it we were following Matt Damon and we come across these other characters and kind of having these little subplots would have maybe even this out more, or we spent more time in certain areas. But it felt like there could have been 3 different movies within this movie in regards to follow Marianne in this village and seeing how the world is handling this, or following Matt Damon and his daughter, which that we can talk about that in regards to the daughter. I just felt like he should have just locked her in a room with her and her whole boyfriend thing. It's like, sure, she's a teenager, she's in love, but it's just like, are you serious? You
Yeah.
just can't stay in your house.
Yeah,
Just-
that's
know.
one of those that's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, human nature versus logic, which is a constant, never-ending struggle within movies.
we're dealing with this right now. People can't
Yup.
stay at home. They want
Absolutely.
to hang out with groups of people. So yeah.
Dude, it's so frustrating. I have friends right now who are down in Brooklyn and they're seeing teenagers just going out for bike rides like it's nothing, and it's like, you know, it might not affect you, but you have family. You might live with a grandparent. You might live with, like, you know, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, we all know the PSAs that are on the television. But to your point about these characters in this cast, I do think that it felt like there was 3 surface level scripts that needed like a 5th, 6th, 7th pass, being like Matt Damon and his daughter, Lawrence Fishburne, and his, like, you know, sort of agent in the field. And then you also sort of had like the dynamic of just like the whole woman who got abducted in the village and whatnot. But they all just felt so surface level that they never really brought me in. So even when I say that like her death was the most impactful, you know, Lawrence Fishburne's informant, his agent in the field, it still felt very thin. It's just the most I was given in this movie. And I don't want people to think like I like hated the film. Like I said, I thought it was a very clear, you know, it was entertaining, you know, dissemination of information. But I just, if you're gonna have this star-studded cast, I felt like there was just so much to be left desired from them. I don't know.
It's definitely a situation where kind of you look at like part of like kind of the legacy of a film is always, to me at least, it's 3 things. It's time, place, and context, you know? Like Chris and I talked about this on our Lost episode, which is where kind of like the idea of like, would Lost still be kind of like this cultural phenomenon if it came out today, you know? And I feel like that's an argument that can also be applied to this movie as well, which is that, again, time and place. Like, this movie comes out I don't even remember what month it was, but in 2011, about like a worldwide pandemic. Most people laugh it off, you know, some people find it like kind of repetitive or like not necessarily that interesting. And now you look at it today and it's like, wow. Well, first off, I mean, the movie wouldn't even be able to be released right now because no movie is being able to be released right now. But it's
Yeah.
the kind of this idea of like, wow, it's out today and it's like the most relevant movie right now, you know? So I guess kind of in that sense, like does that kind of like have any impact overall on? Yep, Adam, 100%. Like that's like exactly what it is here, like everywhere.
It's so unsettling.
Like, it's ridiculous. It really is. But yeah. So like I guess just like, does that kind of context like weigh in at all, like for you guys, the way that it does for me? Because to me, like that's a big reason as to why, not necessarily for my personal enjoyment of movies, because I enjoy a lot of movies regardless of those 3 things, but I'm talking in terms of like the kind of when it comes to like movies standing the test of time and like the really most memorable ones, it's kind of those 3 factors that kind of always take precedence over like any other factors that people may attribute to like movies' success and like being able to stand the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, with this film, just in the context of this conversation in regards to the timing and lasting, I mean, obviously, like I said, this film, we can all watch it now, and it's just like, as you guys mentioned up top, things that happen in this film we're witnessing now. They mentioned social distancing. They mentioned washing your hands, and it's things that we're hearing on an everyday basis now, right? But in regards to just it, being a film that we're talking about to this very day, 9 years later, I think this goes into again the strength of the script and Steven kind of having this approach where again the authenticity of the story and having these experts come into the set and explaining we have that scene with Kate Winslet's character telling the people in Minnesota, explaining the breakdown of I believe the disease in the movie was the MEV1 disease, and talking about how it was similar to 1918 Spanish flu that killed 50 million people, which is crazy. And I believe this film, if I'm not mistaken, killed 26 million people by the end of the film, which is just crazy numbers to imagine. But I just think that, again, the thing that really kind of stuck with me is, even though this came out 11 years or 10 or 9 years ago, it still sits with us, and it's still things that we're witnessing in this pandemic that we're in now.
Yeah, well, the one thing I certainly hope is that the looting doesn't get that bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, toilet paper,
I won't tell. I was about to say,
dumbbells,
you sure it hasn't
pasta.
happened right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard stories. My friend lives out in Tennessee, Nashville to be exact. And I mean, as if they didn't already have enough of an issue with this tornado, now there's people sort of waiting outside of grocery stores, like, sort of like jumping like the elderly and stuff for groceries, like in the outskirts of the city where it's a little more rural. And I hope that stays an anomaly, because this movie got real ugly real fast. I mean, they were literally dishing out cures via a lottery system. And so that's why I like this film worked, regardless of all my problems with it, just like how 0 to 100, as the kids like to say, that it went, like, imagine, like, what would you do if that actually happens?
That's how people are. Like that's the thing. Like you're hoping that's an anomaly, but like you're seeing like more and more evidence of that on social media. Like that video that went viral about the woman who, before the boxes of toilet paper were even like unloaded and put on the shelves in the store, she was buying them up and just putting them on her truck, like right off the truck as they were bringing it in. Like this shit is happening.
And some
right
of that's
now,
for her, but she's
speaking.
trying to profiteer off that too.
No, she's trying to make a statement, and she's just in order to get like clicks and likes, because she knows that it's viral. She knows that her stupidity is going to be recognized by millions of people. And like I guess just in that sense, like it's to me like that's the stuff that kind of makes this movie hold up and really relevant. Like as Matt Damon and his daughter are trying to go and get stuff for the grocery store, and like they're going, and it's literally like dystopia, with like Jude Law is walking around in like his little homemade like kind of like protective suit, like all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I mean this is where it starts to get like a little bit extreme and like make believe, but it's like again, it's to me it's like what great movies do, which is kind of taking reality and twisting it just a little bit in order to really make it sink in. Like that to me is also what satire does really well. And this movie does have satirical elements to it, but if anything, like that's all stuff that like, yeah, it's scary, but like that's what makes this movie better to me,
What's going on, Connor?
What's up, Connor?
What's up, Connor? I mean,
I have a question for you, Chris. Considering that I know you're like the TV guy on this tandem you guys have, this dynamic duo, and I'm a big TV fan myself. But just curious to you, because I love movies and I love TV, and I try to even it out on my channel in regards to reviews and just talking about that. But I wonder, would you think this movie would have worked better? Especially fast forward 2020, where we have Netflix, we have Hulu, we have all these streaming services. Would you be open to it, maybe a TV series? You think it would have played better if it was a TV series where we spend an episode with Matt Damon, we spend an episode with Jude Law, we spend an episode with Lawrence Fishburne? What's your thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, this was shot to me, this movie was shot to me like the great network television shows of the early 2000s. Visually, I kind of kept like thinking that like lost era of those big grandiose like ensemble casts, and like when they really were starting to put like a budget into that sort of storytelling. So yeah, I think if it was done that way, because to me this color grading, it felt very 2000s. It was the very dark, deep blues, and even the white walls were blue, and that like you saw that in movies like Limitless and like the Bourne movies, like that was the color grading of the 2000s for the most part. And the TV certainly reflected that. And so for me, like, yeah, the tone would have matched the colors. And I think we needed an episode with Jude Law. We needed an episode with, Matt Damon. We definitely needed more of a dynamic between that janitor and Lawrence Fishburne to really feel when he went against, like, because they were trying to make him seem like a good guy. And he did the right thing. He got the kid the formula. But like, again, when his wife went and told, and when he told, when he probably shouldn't have, to be honest with you, even your wife, you can't tell in that situation, it just didn't hit me as hard. But like, yeah, I think this would be a great television show, I think, because the problem with this ensemble cast is that like you don't get to know the cast. That's kind of what I'm starting to learn about how I felt coming into this talk through what we're doing right now through this podcast. So I think, yeah, I mean, what do you think, Dom? Because I agree with that.
I mean, my whole thought process is just like backing up like what I've been saying before, which is where this is not the type of a movie that you go into and you watch like in order to like see like, oh, it's got Matt Damon, it's got Lawrence Fishburne, it's got Jude Law, like that's just to help sell the movie, But in terms of like how this movie utilized the actors within the roles themselves, I thought it was pitch perfect. You know, if anything, like the only confusing thing to me was, and this is just like a little bit of my filmmaker brain, but I can see like with Jude Law, whenever he would open his mouth, you know, they wanted to give him like a crooked front tooth, and I could see that they kind of like plastered a fake tooth over his real tooth, and I could start to see like little bits. I'm like, okay, that's the real tooth underneath there, you know. And of course, it obviously it always throws me off when there's like a Brit living in America for kind of like no explanation, but that's just a me thing.
I thought they did a very over the top job of making him seem English. I will agree with you with that. Like the whole trope of like the English teeth, they certainly presented that, and I think because you're right, you did kind of see his mouth pretty clearly in this film, and I wonder if that was
very
intentional.
clearly.
Yeah, I thought that was a little unnecessary, but I mean, I thought his character worked really well. I felt like I got to know his character the most, and it's a shame because you know.
Absolutely. Well, because he's like kind of presenting the opposing point of view that like nobody really wants to ask, but if you think about it, it's like, again, he's making a lot of sense with everything that he's saying, you know, like with all this stuff about the pharmaceutical companies and just kind of like how that's an overall reflection of the American healthcare system, and that was 2011, and it's arguably worse now than it ever has been, you know, with kind of like the uber capitalist kind of feel to it. But yeah, like my whole thought process with that is I'm like, yeah, they utilize the actors like exactly how they were supposed to, and if anything, I feel like kind of giving them to us in little bits, you know, kind of help to reinforce this overall greater story. And yes, I think that you probably would have gotten more from them as people if this were a TV show as opposed to a movie, but I think that's it. That's the only trade-up you get. You know, I think the overall impact, kind of the tightness of that script, the pacing and the tension is lost if you take like this almost 2-hour effort and you drag it out into like an 8-10 hour miniseries. You know, that's when I feel like it starts to get like, that's when it starts to get like a little bit drawn out and a little bit repetitive and a little bit slow and boring. And that's when it kind of like the documentary like style really starts to rear its ugly head if you turn it into a miniseries.
Well, let's turn to the chat here because Adam says something pretty interesting that I kind of want to see what you think about this, Elliot. And I feel like this is kind of why you brought it up. So that's why I want to try to come full circle here. He's saying, you know, he says there are definitely films and shows that hits at the right time and trend. However, it seems that dystopian films that hit real world issues tend to stick with us for the most part. I think that is true, and I think especially with how prevalent this one is. Again, I still feel like this was a little unexplored, but I mean, I definitely think that rings true. And was that kind of where you were going with that question from the start, or am I just completely you know, the fear's taking over here?
Yeah, and I mean, to Adam Ward's point in regards to dystopian films sticking with a little bit longer, again, going back to these characters that we're just talking about, they all make somewhat bad decisions in regards to, we mentioned Lawrence Fishburne, good guy at heart, but he makes a decision to put himself and his family first by calling his, you know, believe Sanaa Lathan was his wife, calling her, and obviously she told her best friend, and that caused some fear. We have, you know, I would honestly say Jude Law is the quote unquote bad guy, if we want to say that, in the film, because he's telling the millions of people and this is a fascinating conversation. We can go down this rabbit hole if you guys would like, in regards to social media, in regards to the platform that you have. He mentions a bunch of times in the film, he has millions and millions of subscribers, or his blog, whatever. He's telling these people not to take the vaccine. And again, there is some truth into what he was saying in regards to how things were being handled, how the CDC was withholding information from the public. But at the same time, on his platform, he's telling people to do the opposite of the thing that could potentially help them and cure them. So I would love to know you guys' thoughts in regards to the Jude Law character, because I think, again, in the times that we live in with our phones and social media, and again, I don't watch it. We're not going to get political in this conversation, but I don't watch the news in regards to a lot of this information that we're getting, just because, again, the way that they're handling this is fear is not the route that we should be taking in regards to how they're presenting this thing. And I would love to know you guys' thoughts on kind of diving deeper into the Jude Law character.
I think it's again, he's probably the most fascinating character in this entire movie, if I'm being completely honest, because again, kind of a repeat of what I've been saying before, he's the only character that's willing to ask those types of questions that kind of nobody else wants to ask, you know, because but when you get into that kind of like that fear mindset, you know, where just fear is driving every single action that you get, you know, when there doesn't seem to be a lot of hope, you know, you look to kind of your higher ups, you know, your government, your pharmaceuticals, all that, in order to kind of rely on and kind of inspire that feeling of safety, except then we forget that, they're people too. They're just as susceptible to screwing up, you know, and they are also, because they are in those positions of power, are even more susceptible to lying to us for what they could claim to be like for our, you know, for our, you know, for our overall greater good, you know, and they kind of use those words as examples. So if anything, like I said, I really admire the character for asking those questions. But that being said, yes, like even like by how the film presents us, he is absolutely the most despicable character in in the movie. Like, I don't care like how justified you are. Like, obviously just lying to people and claiming that like you cured your own illness, you know, just for the sake of getting views, because we know that he was full of shit. He didn't actually care about actually trying to like help people. He was just doing it for views and profiting off of pain. But if we're kind of going even deeper in terms of like how the influence of social media, again, it's another thing that you're just seeing right now, which is where, yes, kind of the overall perpetuation of this thing and the constant reporting and the kind of the never being able to escape from it that social media perpetuates. Yeah, it's good in terms of like keeping track of the numbers, but at the end of the day, like kind of just you're still stuck with that fear just constantly nonstop, day in and day out. Like you literally turn on your phone. It's the first thing that you see when you wake up. You know, we are all sucked into our phones. Phones of literally like dictating society and how we move and how we just think as people. And it's like now the thing that is, it's kind of ironic if you think about it, because the thing that is supposed to be our escape ends up being kind of the source of all of our misery right now, because now there is no escape from any of this stuff.
Yeah, I have to agree with all that. And so, I mean, I'm pretty much on the same page with you guys about Jude Law's character. So I'd rather speak more to the tune of like how much foresight this film had in regards to like where we're at right now. You know, he's throughout the film, you notice his character he keeps continuing to leverage the amount of daily unique visitors his blog is getting. And so it's 2 million. Then I think he says like 8 million. Then I think he ends it at like 12 or 20, whatever the number is, it keeps rising. And so, you know, the profiteering thing that I sort of broke up when you brought up the reference about the woman with the toilet paper, like he's trying to do the right thing, but then I think he gets skewed because he's seeing the money and he's seeing the unique ad traffic. And so him sort of mongering this, like this whole fear, this whole, not fear, but this feeling of like, don't be, you know, fooled or feared by the CDC. Like there is another cure, you know, whether that's true or not, he's caught up in the money. He's caught up in like, he's profiting off of a time where people are afraid. And like, so it's sort of like, this had to have been written in 2008, 2009. So that's even before like the craziness of the social media bubble. Like I'm think they were writing this when MySpace was still around. So I don't think social media had its teeth as sunk into society as it does right now. Yet it felt like this movie could have been written 2-3 years ago. And so that's what I thought was really interesting. And this is why I want to go back after hearing you guys speak so highly about him and sort of like experience some of the director Steven's catalog, because the depth of presence, the understanding I think he has of like the way the world moves, at least seeing how long ago this movie came out to like how real it is in the moment still, you know, 9 years later, almost 10 years later. That's the part about his character that impacted me the most. I still think we didn't get to know him as much as a character, but that's why I say this wasn't a bad film. I think the ideas that were explored, though, were more interested in the people carrying us through it. So...
Yeah, definitely. And kind of with all that being said, I guess like kind of the last thing that I want to tackle before we get into like final thoughts and ratings is kind of like the overall resolution that this movie comes to. So we talked obviously a lot about kind of the real world implications and, you know, certain choices that the film makes and how that kind of reflects the choices that are happening in real life. But again, it's another thing that I brought up in my letterbox spiel, which is kind of the overall narrative resolution. And I brought up like how narrative resolutions always kind of feel more they always seem to go quicker, I should say, than real life resolutions, you know, because obviously like with how even with like kind of like how frantic the pacing was in the third act, you know, because obviously they're like, okay, we know we got to start to wrap this thing up, you know, because it's a movie, but I guess like kind of that was also another part of the movie that felt inauthentic to me, because I know that obviously when and if a vaccine for corona is finally released, it's not going to go around that quickly, you know, like it's but that's also just like my rational brain also like kind of what it's telling me. So I guess like was that like kind of like a problem with you, like how like the film resolved itself, you know, in that sense?
I mean, again, and I think at the heart of the story, it does boil down to, if we were to put, you know, again, it's a star-studded cast, but if we were to put a storyline in the forefront, or the main characters, I would say Matt Damon and his family, because we start off with Gwyneth Paltrow, you know, it starts off with her, and it starts off with that storyline, and it ends in the exact same way. So I think the biggest thing that, you know, Steven was, again, with the human element, Matt Damon being the everyman that we talked about earlier, you know, the film ending with the prom and kind of a hopeful little, you know, everything's going to be fine. 26 million people die, but at least this girl gets her prom. I think that the resolution in regards to, I think one of the things we didn't talk about in regards to the unseen heroes were the two doctors that went against kind of the protocol, right? We have the one doctor that was told to throw away everything, and he did some more investigation to find out that the disease was a mutation of a bat and the pig coming together. And then we have the young lady, the doctor who injected herself, because again, as we just mentioned, the real world situation, there might be, and again, not making any assumptions or anything, but there might be some testing and some cures and some vaccines available for what we're going in now, but it's going to take months to get things approved, maybe even a year or so. So
it's going to take some dead monkeys too.
Yeah. I mean, we have some unsung heroes that that were brought into the mix that I thought that this movie did a good job in. But again, to answer your question in regards to how it wrapped up, did it feel abrupt? Did it feel kind of rushed? To me, it did. In regards to how everything kind of played out. But again, I think the message hit home in regards to, again, just going back to Steven's eye and detail to attention in regards to focusing on the peanuts and focusing on the credit cards getting swiped and how, little things of that nature. I think that his overall message kind of hit with me in regards to just even though he might not stick the landing in some of the finishing points, but I think that the message kind of hit home.
Yeah, definitely. If I could do a quick non sequitur, also probably the scene of them just like putting the dead monkey into like that bag was like probably the most disturbing part of the movie for me. Like no question.
No question. Off Adam with the super chat, man. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, hell yeah. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, Elliot, to what you just said, I couldn't agree more. I think, the finite details, the doing the 3-to-1, the 5-to-1, the 6-to-1, like on that writing board, and sort of like saying like, well, this is what the flu normally does, and this is how many people one person can give it to, and like how easily they went into like talking about like, well, don't worry, it's not transferred on cardboard boxes, which unfortunately in our circumstances we found out it is. But like, so the way they eased into the facts are reasons why I can't hold this movie too much at fault, because if you're going to do this type of movie right, you need to do your research, which obviously we know he has done. I just think it could have been a little more entertaining, and so I think this movie kind of was fighting between being a PSA, getting the information out, but also being a piece of entertainment. And so there's equally as many good things as there are as many bad things on both sides of the coin for me. So with that being said, are we ready to sort of wrap this up, do some like final thoughts and give it our ratings here?
Let's do it.
Cool. Yeah. So Elliot, just so you know, and since you are a guest, we usually like to let our guests go first. We do like a out of 5 stars. So you can do like a 1 point.
On my channel, yeah.
You can do like a 1.986. You know what I'm saying? Like anything you want.
I'm also just waiting for like when we get the one review where somebody decides to go pie. I'm like, I'm rating this movie a pie, a 3.14, and then just does the whole number for pie. I'm waiting for somebody to do that as an actual rating.
And quick thing before I give you my score again, Adam, appreciate it, man. He said that he subscribed to you guys' channel. That's what we wanted to do tonight, guys.
Absolutely, yes.
People to find you guys' channel and vice versa, and be a community. So we appreciate that, Adam. And he also said he gave it a 3. To even out for 3. So yeah. So as far as my score goes, I'll give this film a solid 3.5 out of 5. And on my channel, 3.5 is a solid film. Again, there are some flaws, as Chris mentioned throughout the chat and the live, and I agree with him. I wish we would have spent time with characters more, because again, we would get into a certain storyline and we would go over here and then we'll go back over there, and again, you get lost in Marion's character gets lost in the background, So, but at the end of the day, I think that the message hits home in regards to seeing these different perspectives. Even though we didn't spend as much time with certain characters that we did, it was interesting to get these other perspectives from the everyday man, the CDC, the blog, the journalist, and all that stuff, and wrapping it all up. So for me, even though it has its flaws, I think it still holds the test of time, as we kind of mentioned throughout this live. And for me, like I said, I give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Well, it seems like you and your listeners are on the same page, because Connor also gave it a 3.5. So
a whole lot of like-minded people around here.
Yeah, we have a connection. That's my guy.
There you go. Well, we're super happy to have been let into your universe, man. Thank you again for that.
Absolutely, kind of joining the Movie Files cinematic universe on YouTube, if you will.
Yeah.
But so yeah, if I could just jump in and give my final thoughts real quick. Again, like obviously, again, it's very similar to Blade Runner 2049. This movie was a complete 180 with me watching it this time, as opposed to me watching it, or should I say, not watching it the first time that I saw it. Which is where this movie to me, again, it's not the best film that I've ever seen. I don't think it's a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. It does still have some flaws. I think some of the elements in terms of the kind of the overall docu-feel versus kind of the traditional Hollywood storytelling aspect, some of those don't necessarily mesh well at points. But in terms of what this film is going for, with kind of like creating that, kind of trying to capture the feeling of what it is to be fearful in a time where that gives you no hope, that is constantly adding, like, giving you new reasons to be scared and to start acting irrationally. I think this movie accomplished exactly what it was going for. I think it's, again, another unique contribution to Soderbergh's overall filmography. To me, at least, this is probably one of my favorite of Soderbergh's movies. I actually re-ranked this. I put it at number 2 behind Ocean's 11, which is still my favorite movie from his. I moved it up. It's officially in my top 10 favorites of 2011. I think it's an absolute, even if it's not the best film of all time, I think it's a film that everybody should watch. I think it's honestly, at this point, this is a film that, like, people need to watch, like, especially now, like, once we make it through on the other end of this crisis. So I'm giving it 4 stars out of 5.
Okay, yeah, wow, Dom. I didn't expect you to give it that high, but I you know, your points make sense to me. With that being said, you know, like I said, and I'm never shy about this for all you guys watching, that's why I'm the TV nerd and Dom's the movie nerd, and together our quest is to learn and sort of bring each other into our mutual loves of all this medium of film has to offer. But I think that I've seen enough films now to know when a film is sort of struggling, in my opinion, to sort of find what it wants to be. And so this movie, I would love to give it a higher star rating than a 2.5, but I can't, because unfortunately it's sort of, it has so much potential and it just doesn't tap into it, but it also gets the 2.5 because, like, the information is there and the message is there and it's so resonant of the times we're in right now. But at the end of the day, it's not a documentary. It wasn't marketed as a documentary. It's a movie. It's entertainment. And there's characters that you're supposed to connect with and resonate with. And I simply just didn't do that. You know, it happens sometimes. Yeah.
So, star rating?
Oh, yeah, 2.5. So.
Oh, wow. That's you were saying I was higher than you thought. That was way lower than I thought it was going to be. Like 2.5. Like, I get it. You didn't like the movie, but Jesus.
Hey, man, I gotta be honest, you know, especially in these trying times. And so with that being said, we've said it a bunch, but Elliot, this was awesome. We appreciate you having us.
Thank you for having us on. Seriously, this was huge. Like, you have no idea how huge this was.
Yeah, it was nice to...
And also, thanks to all the people who were commenting in the chat also throughout. That's crazy. That's like the first time that's happened.
Yeah, so Dom, I mean, for the people commenting, why don't you sort of tell them where they can find us, keep up to date with us, and all the things that we do over on our channel and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a podcast channel and a YouTube channel. They're both called Talkin' TV. Talkin', all one word, no G. It's just an apostrophe in place of that. You can look us up on YouTube on our official YouTube channel. So this is airing on Elliot's Movie Files channel right now, but this video will also be up on our channel at the same time that we release this podcast episode, which is Wednesday mornings. Wednesday mornings, we have brand new episodes. Our podcasts are on Anchor, which is a free distribution service that goes out to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, Stitcher, Google Play, Pocket Casts, pretty much any place that you go in order to listen to audio versions of podcasts. Anchor does that for you. We're on there, Talkin' TV. We're also on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, at Talkin' TV or at Talkin' TV Podcast. If you go in and you type in those words, then you will absolutely find us. Our logo is pretty hard to miss. Not to miss, I should say. It's a giant, like, neon logo. Like, Chris did the worst. Like, he made it as noticeable as humanly possible. And also, if you want to look for my own personal stuff, because I also have my own personal stuff off on the side, my little side hustle, that is at Movie Nerd Reviews or just Movie Nerd Reviews, all one word, or just those 3 separate words, whichever you choose, on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, my own personal channel, which I'm going to start throwing up a lot of content on as well in a few days here. It's at Christian Ivanko, my first and last name. Just tack a few more letters onto Chris right there, and you got it, Christian Ivanko. I'm a musician. I make music, so I'm going to be doing a lot of cover songs coming up of, like, Incubus and Sublime and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and sort of like the feel-good music that I love to listen to for a pick-me-up, because I think a lot of people could use that. So if you want to come and jam out with me, I'm pretty much going to be, as far as next Monday goes, like, you know, everyday posts. So I'd love to have you there. And Elliot, dude, I know that this is your channel, but since we're also going to post this on the podcast, interwebs, and our channel, like, where can people find you and sort of, get up to date? How active are you on your channels? Like, act like we don't know everything you do right now.
For sure. No, guys, it was a blast, and we got to do this again in the future for sure. Yeah, guys. So as far as for those that are new to me on, as far as platforms go, YouTube, I try to be as consistent as possible, at least 4 to 5 videos a week, and they range from movie reviews for when things were at the theater, reviewing the latest movies, and sometimes I get a bunch of early screenings to see films a couple days or a couple weeks in advance. So, but since we're not at the theater, I review movies on all the streaming platforms, most of the big ones. I do a lot of TV reviews, whether it be week-to-week TV shows like FX Devs. I review that on a weekly basis and had a fun time doing that, and we got the finale coming pretty soon. But, I do trailer reactions, unboxings, giveaways, do a lot of fun stuff on this channel. And in the future, doing more collaborations with awesome people like Chris and Dom, and many more things coming in the works. And then as far as social media goes, I'm on Twitter. I use it occasionally. I find a lot of my movie news from Twitter, but I also just kind of use Twitter for just a platform to get my, reach, put my content on there and say, hey, check out this video. But I'm on Twitter pretty frequently. But the biggest one is definitely Instagram. I stay very active on Instagram, whether it be Insta stories with movie news, TV news, different polls, things of that nature. So you guys can follow me at Movie Files on Instagram, and on Twitter at Movie Files Live. And then, of course, subscribe to my channel at Movie Files.
Beautiful. And so, Elliot, we pardon our French here, but there's only one way we end this podcast, and there can only be one way we end this podcast here. And Dom, I think, has coined quite the podcast exit, and we're happy to do it here on the Movie Files YouTube channel. Dom, is there a message you want to leave the people with here today?
As always, people, watch more fucking movies. We out.
I agree with that, people.
Have a good one, guys.